Hi, welcome back. If you've been following along with our video series on becoming cloud native so far, you've seen quite a bit of content. This is the first of three on network automation. And so, just to recap a little bit, we've managed to cover quite a bit of ground, especially around the nature of becoming cloud native from a public sector perspective, as well as looking at some of the use cases for Ansible with regard to integration. Also, some more standard software development practices around Ansible Lint and just good code hygiene, as well as just a general look at how Ansible is declarative in nature and why that's better in terms of being able to control and predict changes that you're making to your environment. So, as we've talked about in a previous video around these pro tips, there are two that really stand out when we want to have a discussion about network automation. The first is how much DevOps and cloud really work hand in hand together, and that we have to be able to embrace a lot of the principles of DevOps in order to really get to the cloud and make the strengths of the cloud really stand out for us. And the second is just how much automation is a part of the overall DevOps journey, and that it really is just so significant and so important to discuss. And network automation is another opportunity for us to really see that value. We've shown this slide previously, but just to highlight again, in terms of skills gaps and very large surveys that are coming out talking about the goals and the challenges around modernizing our IT operations, as we've said, if we are having skills gaps, the good news is that we're in great company, right? And if we look on the right hand side of this slide, we see that pretty much everybody's headed toward cloud, whether that's multi-cloud or hybrid cloud or what have you. And so it's really more about how we're going to go about doing that that needs to be addressed. Another previous slide is just looking in particular at the automation picture and recognizing that as everyone was going into 2020, most survey respondents to IDC were recognizing that automation really needs to be a key aspect of what they're doing from an infrastructure agility perspective and so on. And just another validation point there. Another slide from a previous video, just looking here, this is the AWS Wall architected framework, excuse me. And these are the 5 pillars for it. And just to highlight, whether directly or indirectly, how often automation comes up in these conversations and in the goals that you should have in becoming cloud native. So we've tried to address the question of why Ansible in previous videos, but just to recap a little bit and to talk a little bit more about where Ansible fits into the overall marketplace, we see that it, as of last year, it had already grown to running on 4 million nodes. And the growth curve for that, as it shows here, has been pretty terrific over the last few years. And right now, so many downloads per month, so many happy Ansible automation customers, continues to be very heavily contributed to from a GitHub project perspective. And today, by many measurements, it is really the #1 configuration management system. So the specific question that comes up from a network automation standpoint is, why would we use Ansible for that, and why would network teams benefit from it head to head against anything else? So to go into that a little bit, #1, and we'll be unpacking all of this through these videos to follow here, but really, it is human readable and thus version controllable. There's nothing to install in network devices. There's quite a bit of module support, both from a community and an OEM perspective. It's very helpful, and it allows fast adoption for network engineers. So there really is, as we'll go in and talk about a little bit more, there's a big opportunity here, right, to be doing much better than the status quo and sort of legacy IT operations processes. And the Gartner study that we'll talk about in a little bit more detail really does kind of highlight where the drivers are for moving forward from a network automation perspective and really taking that to the next level. So that's about it from an overview perspective, and we'll be going in part 2 to discuss a little bit more from the infrastructure engineering perspective or network engineering perspective, what it means to be human readable and version controllable. And also, a little bit about how Ansible works a little bit differently for those who may be familiar with Ansible and how it works in general, and looking at that in terms of how it actually works on network devices. And then the third part, we'll be talking about module support, and we'll be talking a little bit more about the opportunity, kind of the art of the possible. So thank you so much for checking that out, and we'll hope to see you on the next video.